Gotta share this really quick here. Cancel that, close that. Looks like we got some fireworks going on out there. We'll just wait a little bit till some people join on here. Just trying to set up the live stream a bit here still, so I can see the live chat. There we go. Yeah, we'll just wait for a few people to come on here and we'll start talking about what's coming up and whatever else you guys want to talk about. Oh. Join on here. Just trying to. Hello, everybody. So far, trying to set this up so I can see this live chat. Looks like a pretty chilly night in store. How's it going, everybody? You can see our next system developing out here already, coming off the Aleutians and Kodiak Island. Going to be heading our way here. Yeah, it looks like we're probably going to see some snowfall on Monday. This is the origination point of it. You can see we've got Arctic air over like the Yukon and North Canada, and we've got Arctic over Alaska here too. And it's going to spill off of Alaska here. And it's going to take the long path across the Gulf of Alaska and back in, and it's going to modify that lower level air mass. So we're going to need that precip, that frontal system, to be strong, and we're going to need it to tap some of the air above and bring some of that cold air down with it as it's crossing our area. Because by the time this gets here, our Arctic air mass that we're under now is going to be it's going to be scoured out. Yeah, you might see a good burst of snow on Monday here. The GFS is pretty cold. The European has been hanging on to some snow too. It's been showing some measurable snow. It has temperatures a little bit warmer than the GFS. Phil from Bellingham, hello. Hood Canal. 22 in Roy. Yeah, you can see on my Davis there, it's 24.9. I'm really close to the Puget Sound too, so I can imagine some of the outlying areas are getting pretty chilly. 22 degrees, yikes. Yeah, it's going to be a hard freeze tonight. We've got slush and snow all over the place out there. The roads are still wet. So hopefully everybody is taking it easy out there, going back and forth from parties and whatnot. Yeah, so let's see. Yeah, Happy New Year. Hopefully you guys can chat for a while before you have to go off to your New Year engagement, or maybe you're just chilling at home like I might end up doing. Here, so I'll start off by showing you guys this here. We can kind of see, this is what's going on in the satellite imagery. You can see this cold air spilling off of Alaska here. That's what you're seeing here on the infrared satellite. This is our next system coming in here. And watch that red, the really cold air start pouring off Alaska there. And notice how when it comes across Pacific, you see it modifying. Once it gets over the relatively warm ocean, that lower level of air modifies pretty well. It's still not warm by any means, but you can see by the time it comes across, it's warmed up into the, near 40 degrees. So we need a tap. We need a strong frontal system to tap that air above the surface. And we're still dealing with some pretty chilly air aloft here. So as we go to temperature aloft, say 5,000 feet here, you can see that air pour off of Alaska there, and then it heads our way, and you can see it gets here not as modified as that surface air does. So we need to tap some of that to bring the snow down to the surface. Is that Lake Cushman, 750 feet elevation? 16 in Arlington, wow. Well, there's going to be a warm up in between there. So it's going to warm up, and then this frontal system, as it moves over, it's going to bring some heavy precipitation with it. And we're trying to determine right now if that precip is going to be snow or if it's going to be a really cold rain. And if it is snow, is it going to drop the temperature down to freezing, and is it going to stick? Like the GFS right now is showing that it's going to be just about freezing. So it's showing accumulating snow. This is a pay website actually this is Weather Bell. Yeah, traveling on the roads tonight. I mean, there's nothing wrong with chilling at home. That's for sure. Grants Pass, Oregon. What's the elevation of Grants Pass? So let's look at what the GFS is showing weather-wise. And let's see just how far it's supposed to snow here too. I mean, there's people down here in Oregon that want to know. Let's start off by looking at surface winter. We'll go to 24-hour Kuchera. There's going to be a wet snow that falls. And you can see the GFS, man. Look at that. It just really gets about Tacoma north, really heavy. And then you can see about Olympia, out Highway 12, out towards Aberdeen, just east of Aberdeen, and down the I-5 corridor even. It looks like it's about, I mean, just north of Portland too. So it depends on these precipitation rates. Stand by with me 1 second, guys. I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. You see the dog on the screen there? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so you can see the GFS has got a pretty snowy solution there. And let's check the temperatures there. And we know that GFS hasn't been performing as well as the European. And you know, I hate it when it shows these snow totals and it's got these temperatures just above freezing. I know that precip can drop the temperature down to freezing, but it's just, it reminds me of what happened a couple weeks ago when it kept painting snow and it was just above freezing, and we would get a little bit of snow, but it would melt and it would not accumulate. No, I've been looking at it a little bit further, and there's some cold solutions coming in too. Like the European has this really interesting system coming in from the west, and it has this really strong offshore flow, and it tries to bring precipitation over us. And it kind of reminds me of a freezing rain event. I think the GFS was showing something similar too. Let's go into the future here. This is Tuesday morning now, and check it out. It just drops the temperature back down through the Puget Sound pretty good there. And then it warms us up just above freezing on Tuesday during the day, back down below freezing on Wednesday, And look at that. It just keeps us really cold into the morning on Wednesday and really doesn't bring us above freezing on Wednesday. So let's check that too. I want to see what that's showing here. Yeah, it's showing some freezing rain in there a bit. When did it bring that freezing rain? Let's see. So that it actually brought that freezing rain on. Yeah, I don't know about that. That's probably an error. That's probably what we're looking at there. GFS is showing this pretty significant freezing rain event. I mean, that would be pretty devastating. I don't know if that's going to happen, but the European was actually showing something similar too. Let me look at that. Let's zoom in on state and check out. Oh, nope, we want surface wind here. Let's do surface wind. Actually, let's do north wind, northwest. It shows this a little better. So notice those big winds on the Oregon coast. You see that front move through there on Monday. And then we notice this system up here in Vancouver Island. It's this next system. Actually, we're going to have to go out to the control run, the ensemble control. This system up here in the Vancouver Island. It's this next system out here off the Oregon coast we're watching. And was that? Okay, so actually, it was this one here. Check out this offshore flow here, all across Washington through the gaps. And you've got this crazy warm front out here off the Washington coast. Some kind of overrunning event would be possible here if we've got cold air in place in eastern Washington or British Columbia being pulled back into the area. Well, they're kind of showing the GFS is on the cold side. So let me show you what the European is showing here. And even though the European was showing a little bit warmer, this is for Sunday. You can see the European going up to 41. Monday, you know, mid upper 30s. Tuesday has mid upper 30s again. But we've got cold air nearby. So if that one of these systems sets up south like we saw and pulls dry, cool air through the gaps and we get overrunning precip, it's possible we could get some kind of freezing rain event out of that later on in the week. And let's go ahead and put this on here too. I want to see what exactly the European is showing for this frontal system coming in here. The Euro keeps showing that burst of snow happening Sunday night into Monday. And then you'll see the surface temperatures are really marginal. You know, it's going to have to drop down with that band of precip as it comes through. And I don't know if that's going to bring it down enough to get accumulation down, you know, into the Seattle metro, especially on cement. Yeah, this next one's going to be tough coming up. You know, it's not going to be a long-term, well, it's not going to be as cold as we have. Let me just show you just how cold this cold snap was. Check these temperatures out. So the day after Christmas, we topped out at 31. The 27th, we topped out at 27. The 28th, 28, 29, 29. And we got above freezing yesterday. And today, CTAC got to 31. So that's 5 days with highs below 32, which is really rare. And let me just show you something. I just brought up some years here. 2016, we didn't have 1 day below freezing for a high. Oops, I shouldn't have closed that out. But I think 2014, we had 2 days. 2015, we had 0. I pulled up, let's see, this is February 2021. Everybody remember the huge snowstorm we had on February 13th? We topped out at 31 that day. We had 1 day that we stayed below freezing in that huge snow event. February 2019, we only had 1 day at CTAC that we stayed below freezing. We had 5 this month. So it just shows you how rare this cold snap is. Monday, Tuesday, Arlington North. Well, there's going to be an area in there that probably sees some, well, It's hard to say how much of this is going to stick, though, down on the cement. The temperatures are going to be really marginal for this event. As you can see, we kind of warm up through the Puget Sound here Monday morning. And we do see some cold air around, and then it depends on some later systems I think have a chance to bring some cooler air in. We also need to talk about high winds, too, around the area. Yeah, Bellingham. Let's see, Bellingham. So let's zoom in a little bit here. We'll go to Seattle. Back the euro up. You can see it's, yeah, I mean, it's really cold tonight. Check that out. Looks like Seattle goes down to 19. Bellingham 16. Look at Vancouver up there, just across the border, 14 degrees. Look at that. Some of the outlying areas, 7 degrees. I mean, where is this? At Arlington, just north of Marysville there? That's incredible. Some areas just east of, yeah, so I want to say Issaquah out here. Look like you get down to the single digits possibly. Well, Southwest Washington, you know, I'm not sure. We'll look into that here in a bit. Let's check that out. Yeah, we got really cold this snap. I mean, this was impressive cold that got in here. But yeah, look at these temperatures. That's amazing. 5 degrees in Arlington. That's amazing. So yeah, it's going to get really cold down in Bellingham too. Now we're starting to get into the morning tomorrow. 8 in the morning, 9, 10. And we start to warm up a little bit. Seattle gets above freezing. Bellingham's still below freezing at this point. Most of Puget Sound is just above freezing. So another cold day tomorrow. Definitely. Looks like Bellingham does get above freezing tomorrow. And you see some of the area warm up, especially up here in the San Juan's, Whidbey Island, Puget Sound up here. It looks like it warms up a bit. And that's probably because of this. Let's actually go. Look at these winds up here. Big southeast winds. In fact, while we're here, let's touch on this too. Nope. It might not let me click on this. Maybe I'll close this down and bring it back up. Yeah, that didn't like me. Let's check this out though. So yeah, there's a high wind watch up here, and there's a high wind watch for the coast too. So heads up there. Look at, these are sustained winds in knots. So if we look at gusts, check these out. There's some over 50 mile per hour gusts to be expected. Bellingham 49. That's why it's going to warm you up tomorrow afternoon in Bellingham. The wind is going to be ripping. It looks like it misses Seattle for most of this wind event, but south of Tacoma, 40 plus, the coast, 50 plus possible. 500 feet and above. Yeah, I mean, if you get above 1,000 feet, then things get much better with this kind of, you know, we're on the borderline of a warm up this week, but some models are kind of hinting that we might not quite get there, but definitely the mountains and places above, like I think it was 1,200 feet, are going to stay snow. Spokane to Nelson. Remind me where Nelson is. I mean, it's going to be snowing over in eastern Washington. Here, let's back out and look at eastern portions of the states here. So we're going to see this. Let's do 6-hour precip here, and we'll back this up and go through here. And you'll see the precip start to reach the area Sunday morning into western. Look at the Cascades are getting dumped on again. And you'll see that snow start to build in eastern Washington. Look at that Monday morning. So if you're traveling in eastern portions of the state, both Oregon and Washington on Monday, you need to be heads up there. That looks like a pretty significant snow event. Yeah, I hope this is useful to you guys. And you can see, I mean, you can see how low the snow level is here on the European. You can see the snow just out of the Seattle metro area and higher hills. And it shows that burst there of snow. I mean, look at that up by Everett, Seattle, North Everett. Higher elevations there, Hood Canal. I mean, that would probably include Lake Cushman. Look out. You might get a nice snowy treat here on Monday morning. Yeah, definitely. Late Sunday, Monday snow for Eastern Washington. Yes. I'm going to close that. And reopen this. Yeah, that was, I mean, I love that. I love these cold, these snowy solutions. I never get tired of the snow, but then again, I don't live in Eastern Washington or Montana or whatever, so I know it can be kind of. So yes, late Saturday through Sunday evening, south winds 35, 45, gusts to 50 for Skagit, Whatcom County up there, so heads up, 55 miles per hour. Power outages, after everything that everybody's gone through up there, extreme cold, extreme flooding, people are still recovering from that stuff, so heads up, down trees, power outages are all possible there. High wind watch there. San Juan County, Admiralty Inlet, North Coast, Central Coast. And of course, about the same speeds for the coastline here it's showing. 55 mile per hour gusts. Nothing too crazy for the coast, but once you get 55 mile per hour over the lowlands interior, it starts causing problems. Not so much north wind not yet anyway. I mean, it's probably going to be back at some point this year, or should I say next year, starting tomorrow, but it's coming. Yeah, if you got front wheel drive and you're used to driving in the snow, then it might not be too bad. I mean, the snow's going to be dry over there, but you got to be aware of where you're going too. You don't want to get caught in high winds and low visibility. The snow's blowing across the road. It's easy to just kind of go off into a ditch or a culvert or something like that. So you got to be careful if you're driving around in Eastern Washington on Monday morning, Eastern Oregon. You can see there's a winter storm watch all through the Washington Cascades, all the way down the Oregon Cascades. High wind watch, Southern Oregon Cascades. Freeze warning, Oregon coast. There's a coastal flood advisory even out there, Willapa Bay. Just for high tides generally. So a requirement for a blizzard is you need 35 miles per hour or greater for 3 hours, and visibility needs to be a quarter mile in blowing or falling snow. And there's a lot of dry snow over there, so if the winds pick up, it's going to get wild in a hurry. Let's take a look at what kind of wind speeds we're looking at there. Surface wind. Yeah, it's kind of what I saw earlier. It looks like it's going to be confined mainly to areas south of Spokane through northeast Oregon, mainly higher terrain areas. But the mountains too, some of these mountainous areas for the Cascades are going to get really high winds with, moderate heavy snow falling. So you could be getting some blizzard conditions in some of these higher terrain areas. But again, it doesn't take much wind to blow the snow around. It can make the lines on the road look really deceiving. Well, there's more snow coming to the Cascades, Eastern Washington, Eastern Oregon. But Western Washington, that's what we're kind of looking at. We're looking at a period of time where the freezing level could drop back down to the surface under a heavy enough precipitation band. Here, I'm going to bring up the GFS and show that too. I'll show you the timing of this front. So here's now, and you can see we go a while without some precip, and then Sunday, You'll see some coming in from the northwest there. Check out South BC though. I mean, and then you can see this band come across the Puget Sound here during the morning Monday. GFS keeps it snow for a while there too, man. That's kind of an interesting solution. But the temperatures are just above freezing, but if that precipitation is heavy enough, it'll be bringing that snow down to the surface during that precipitation. Yeah, the passes are going to be wild. Let's see what it was saying there. Winter storm watch. Yeah, I mean, 12 to 18 inches with wind gusting 40 miles per hour. That's basically what a blizzard is. So heads up there. Above 2,000 feet, west slopes of the Cascades, 12 to 30 inches possible. Winds could gust as high as 45. So that is, you know, that's among some of the most extreme conditions that you can get, really. Once you get 40 plus and you're dealing with heavy snow, then it's basically whiteout. You need to be really careful crossing the passes. Sunday afternoon through Monday afternoon. Stevens, Snoqualmie, White Pass, heads up. Yeah, Lake Stevens, you guys might cool off pretty good tonight. Yeah, same thing for the Olympics, even a little bit more extreme. 12 to 30 inches for the Olympic Mountains. Winds could gust as high as 50 miles per hour. So you don't have to go far if you want to experience some extreme weather right here in the Pacific Northwest. Check this out too. High wind watch out here. Foothills of Blue Mountains, northern Blue Mountains, southern Blue Mountains, Oregon. Gust to 60. And there's going to be a lot of dry snow around, so it's going to be blowing. You can even get some brief whiteout conditions in that kind of wind. Well, it's kind of like what an anafront is, the term for precipitation in a frontal system that drops the temperatures down. Or you could it's also evaporative cooling. For example, if it's an Arctic air mass and we're very cold, say we're at 35 degrees and the dew point is really low and the air mass is very dry in Seattle, and then you get precipitation over that air mass, it will do evaporative cooling, and that will then lower the temperature of the air mass, and it'll bring the dew point up, and they'll meet usually below freezing, and then that precip has cooled the entire air mass, and it causes temp to drop below freezing. You get accumulating snow. So it's evaporative cooling. The Olympics, I mean, there's some peaks in the Olympics that match up with the Cascades, but generally the mountain range is a lot bigger for the Cascades. Yeah, the Olympics are a smaller mountain range and generally not quite as high, but there's some peaks that are as high as some Cascade peaks, except for like Mount Rainier, Mount Baker, obviously Glacier Peak, stuff like that. Yeah, Portland gets their best events when we start building up some cold air, and then we get a system that can tap that. And you guys living in Portland is like, you know about the gorge pretty intimately at that point. It's a sea level cold air conduit that just accesses eastern Washington and Oregon. And if a system lines up right, it can bring a lot of cold air right into Portland, big freezing rain events. If the cold air is deep enough, it can cause big snow events. South Whidbey Island, yeah, heads up for that. High wind warning, high wind watch out there. I believe that extends to Whidbey Island. Maybe they didn't include Whidbey Island. Am I just not seeing it there? Yeah, it'll be windy there either way, but it's just saying San Juan County now. How do the mountains in the Olympic Peninsula and also the mountains to the west affect our weather here? So yeah, the Olympic Mountains are basically the reason why the convergence zone exists. You know, you have this nice big gap here, the Strait of Juan de Fuca, and you've got another relatively low gap. The Chehalis Gap is what we call it out here over Aberdeen, Elma, Olympia. And when you get northwest winds, they'll split. Instead of going up over the mountains, it'll go around the Olympics, and it'll go around and come back up from the south, and you'll get a convergence zone anywhere from north of Everett to all the way down to Tacoma, depending on the prevailing wind direction on basically the wind direction coming over here. And there was an actual study done on it, and it had parameters you could look at and see the northwest winds had to exist for a few hours, and then they would predict convergent zone activity. So yeah, it'll wrap around there, and that's what causes the convergent zone activity. And sometimes it'll be rain for Everett, and it'll be sunny in Arlington and sunny in Seattle. And sometimes that convergent zone moves south through the Puget Sound. Again, depending on the prevailing winds. So there's a new, actually the NAM, the short-term models are running now. The high-resolution NAM is running right now. It actually might be out. And then the GFS will come out right around 9 p.m. is when I check that. And then the European starts running at about 9:45 p.m. And so we have new updates by that time. And the 18Z European model only goes out to 90 hours. And the 0Z and the 12Z runs go out to 240 hours. So it's more of a useful run. The GFS runs 4 times a day, and it runs out to 384 hours each time. Yeah, it depends on. Malin asks, what other than pressure gradient, is there anything else you look for to predict highest surface wind speeds? Yeah, it can be. It depends on your proximity to some terrain gaps. Like for example, we're going to have a large pressure gradient over the region, but you notice there's no high wind watch for Everett South. And that's because generally the southwest winds don't favor this area. They get more of a fetch going over the open water here, and you get a better, wind run out over the water here. Here it gets disrupted by terrain flow from the Cascades. It's being pulled southeast through the region. When Seattle gets it is when that gradient lines up from south to north, or the gradient is cast and the winds are more southerly through the Puget Sound. Better winds for Seattle. Southeast tends not to favor Seattle for high winds. I call them southeast sucker events, kind of pulling the wind up through the region here. Prediction for snow to melt. Yeah, it depends on how high you are. Some of the areas above 1,500 feet are going to be snowed in till probably, late winter, early spring. No, Portland's winter isn't over yet with. Raul says, think that Portland's snow is over with. Maybe for this round. You might see some snow during the day Monday with that powerful front that moves through. I don't think it'll be a lot of accumulation in Portland. But I think that this winter is so, technically meteorological winter starts December 1st. And it's been extremely active October, November, December. We're bound to get a break at some point, but then I tend to just have a gut feeling that it's going to be back again at some point in January, and probably at a point in February also, that we're going to continue this active weather. Is flooding getting more likely? Brian asks. Well, it depends. I'm not sure what that pertains to exactly, if that's a climate change question or not. Is West Seattle, so F asks, is West Seattle noticeably different than downtown in terms of snowfall? West Seattle probably is a little bit of more favored than downtown. Seattle's just, it's right at sea level there, and West Seattle is a bit higher. So if anything, West Seattle would get a little bit more. And something that's an interesting fact, downtown Seattle versus SeaTac. SeaTac tends to get about 10% more precipitation than downtown Seattle. And that's because of the rain shadow. It affects Seattle a little bit more. So you'll get more rain as you go south out of Seattle. And about 10% more at SeaTac. Southwest Washington. here, let's just look at the model, for example. Let's bring up we'll go through the NAM 3KM together. It should be out now, and it is. We'll go to Washington State. We have Brian asking how much more snowfall Southwest Washington could get. So let's just jump right into the winter here and check out. The NAM has been really downplaying some of these totals, but let's just see what it says just for our own. Shows a little bit there south of Everett Monday morning. And you notice most of it's confined to the upper elevations. A little bit of a band. This isn't altogether too unbelievable here. I mean, this system could easily not bring accumulating snowfall down into the metro areas. This is a very marginal event. But if that front is strong enough, it could do it for a few hours and even cause some accumulating snowfall. And then the NAM is even showing some of that, Seattle north towards Everett there. A little bit on the Kitsap Peninsula, but yeah, the higher terrains are going to get blasted, but that's what we've come to expect. Beacon Hill. I mean, anytime you're on a hilltop, it makes a big difference. Normandy Park here, I'm on a hill 330 feet up, and in some of these snow events, I have noticeably more snow than just a mile away, right at the, right next to the Puget Sound. And let's check out. Yeah, you can see the SNAM is lower resolution here. You can kind of see how that resolution bleeds into the higher terrain there a bit. So not as accurate as the high resolution NAM. But let's see what the wind says. I want to see what the wind says for the NAM 3KM. Some of these gusts. So let's see when this wind's supposed to pick up. We have a high wind watch. Skagit, Whatcom County, San Juan County, and the Washington coast. And this is going on into, this is late Saturday night. You can see the wind picking up over Whidbey there. Bellingham 49, some gusts over 50 on Whidbey Island. Oregon coast is picking up here. We got Whidbey Island 54 miles per hour. On into Sunday afternoon. Yeah, it's going to be windy for a while. Look at that. I mean, then a burst of wind for Whidbey there. And then we can check the swath just to see the high gust there. Yeah, 54 across Whidbey. Orcas Island 51, 54, 51 in Bellingham. So pretty good wind is coming up here through Sunday night. Actually, most of those gusts are going to come through late tomorrow night, actually, into Sunday morning. And then you can see how the winds just get roaring up here. You want to get some extreme weather, go hang out and up by Mount Rainier on Sunday night. I don't suggest that, but if you were into that type of thing. And some of these gusts in eastern Washington too, with the snow falling, gusting 30 miles an hour, that can be pretty extreme. Whiteout, you can get some whiteout conditions with moderate to heavy snow falling. Yeah, I know a lot of people are saying they're sick of the snow. The blue color is just lighter wind here. You can see blue is generally 34 miles per hour or less. Yeah, Matthew says 5 miles northeast Snoqualmie is going to get slammed. What's the elevation in there, Matthew? Oregon coast, man, it's going to get some pretty good winds. Check these gusts out over 60 miles an hour along the coastline here. Impressive. Yeah, it's tough with the weather models. If you don't have enough resolution, Andres asks, are weather models going along the Oregon coast, do they make it more or less reliable being so close to the ocean? Like the Oregon coast, there's a mountain range just to your east there. And so it's hard to pick up sometimes. It's hard to get good enough maps where you can zoom in and see just exactly what kind of wind speed you can expect for your area or snowfall, for example. Because some of these times you're looking at these maps and the resolution is poor, so it looks like, you know, you've got 8 inches coming all the way down to the coast, when in essence it's only for the higher terrain, and it's just a poor resolution map, and it's just kind of showing that. And if you could zoom in far enough and the resolution was good enough, you could pinpoint that higher snowfall to the mountains, or that higher wind peak gust to the mountains instead of, you know, down in the valley, for example. I've heard that the Canadian model is doing okay, is doing pretty well, and almost matching up with the European model recently. But that it tends to vary sometimes. The European, they put a lot of resources into that model, and they charge for their services. So to be fair to the American model, the GFS is the American model, and it is, how should I say this? It does. We handle a lot of things. You know, we do the National Weather Service is doing a lot of different things, and we don't have all our resources for, how should I say it? So not all of our resources are into the GFS. The European is just more of a cared for model. They're using all their resources into it, and the National Weather Service is running so many different things. Like we run a high resolution model. The HER is basically just a high resolution version of the GFS. Yeah, 463 right against Mount Si. So that's right up that's by North Bend, isn't it? So here is the European model for the 18Z. You can see how it kind of warms us up here. Warm being a relative term. I mean, highs still just in the 30s and 40s. I take this with a grain of salt, especially in the extended here too. What this tells me is these high temperatures in the mid 30s, that means there's some cold air around. And this means that a system taking the proper track, or a little bit of a change in mean ridge position for Arctic high up there, can mean a colder solution for Western Washington. So F asks about the snowfall potential for Seattle. I mean, tomorrow morning it's going to be a lot more clear. We're going to have more high resolution model runs in by then. And as a rule, when the European is showing above freezing temperatures in snowfall, I kind of been disregarding it. Same thing with the GFS. It's showing a temperature just above freezing and it's showing accumulating snowfall. I've kind of just been really skeptical of that forecast. And that's kind of what it's showing with this front. I don't doubt that we'll see flakes in the air. I don't know about a significant accumulating snowfall. But again, my opinion might change as future runs come in here, because it is close. That it is Arctic air and it's coming out of Alaska. It's just crossing the water here. And it just depends on how strong the frontal system is. If there's enough vertical motion in that front, it will tap enough cold air to bring it down to freezing and be snowing. And for example, something like SeaTac Airport, if it's, you might look outside and it's not really sticking that much on the streets, but it is snowing, you need to check ahead, because planes come in with super cooled wings and snow will stick on airplane wings when it's not sticking on anything else, and then it becomes a huge deal to de-ice an airplane, and there can be significant delays at an airport, all carriers, if you have that going on. Well, yeah, I'm trying to determine what kind of temperatures are going to happen, because it looks like we're going to be warm. We're only going to be cold enough for the snow to stick during the frontal passage. So just how cold will that drop us down? I-5 and Highway 18 are in good condition in the South Sound. That's good to know. So let's see if here, let's update this real quick here. Yeah, this is our next weather maker. You can see the frontal system already taking shape out here. This cold air just pouring off of Alaska here. In our usual snow setups, we get this cold air pouring off of British Columbia, taking a short trajectory off the continent and right back into Western Washington. That way, the lower levels don't don't warm up as much, I should say, sorry. And so when that cold air takes that short trajectory, it does pick up moisture, and it's still very cold. And then it comes back in here, and we got cyclogenesis off the coast, and it's bringing moisture back in, and we're starting to bring a pressure gradient that brings that north wind out of the Fraser River Valley, moves it down to the Puget Sound, and we get cold air in place. And then you still continue to bring that moisture in off the coast, and it rides up over that cold air, which is what happened on Sunday. That's why we got such a good snowfall on Sunday. Yeah, thanks for stopping by. The side streets are sketchy. Yes, they are. Here in Normandy Park, it's like an ice rink out there. Yeah, I drove down to Lake Shasta last year, that huge blizzard they had, and it was nuts. I mean, I'd never seen the snow accumulated so much. It snowed like 3 feet just overnight in like a 15-hour period. It was insane. It literally was just covering it. We had to dig my car out. Yeah, we often, that's something that is pretty common. When you get one La Nina year, it's usually followed up with another, which means that next year, since this is another La Nina year this year, we're probably headed towards a neutral and then probably an El Nino the year after that. So snow lovers need to make the most out of this, because some of these El Nino years we do not get any snow at all. And some of them are pretty bad and boring winters. So I don't like those winters. I like crazy weather. I know a lot of people don't though, so. Yeah, Mount Shasta was great. Yeah, the models will try to account. Chris asked you, the model surface temperature maps take into account heavy precipitation, lowering freezing levels. They try. They don't always come up with it well with it. And I want to say, sometimes it's hard for these air masses to be scoured out, but we're probably going to scour it out pretty good. So we're going to be relying on this front all by itself out here to drop the snow level back down. It's not like we're going to have an Arctic air mass that this is running back into. We're going to be warmed up enough, we're going to modify enough that it's not going to be considered an Arctic air mass for Western Washington or Western Oregon. That's not the case in Eastern Oregon and Eastern Washington. It's going to stay cold over there, and this is all going to be snow except maybe the lowest valleys. So where are we here? 7:30. This is the NAM. Let's check the HER here. And we're going to go back to the 0Z since that runs out 48 hours, and we'll check this. Let's see what the HER is showing. This is my first look at this next system with the HER. Does it go out far enough? Bring some precipitation in Sunday. This is when we're getting warmed up here. We're getting that onshore gradient. And it only goes out to Sunday afternoon. Yeah, I wouldn't mind more La Nina years, but at least we get a couple of them back to back. Last year was a fairly mundane winter until February rolled around, as far as snow anyway. Let's check out the Canadian. The Canadian's been running warmer with this next system too. Let's see what it says. Yeah, it looks like that was the front there. It doesn't bring any snow to the lowlands. A little bit. It cooled it down behind the front there, the Olympia South. But still not too significant. Let's see what it says for precipitation, snow totals. A little bit up north behind the front as it cools down, but nothing like what we've been dealing with recently. Eastern Washington's a different story. If you want snow, you know, head east. All right, thanks for stopping by. So I'm going to go over the, here, let's do this. I haven't done this yet today either. I'm going to run the control run. The 12Z control run goes at 360 hours on the European model here. And we'll just look at pressure and kind of infer weather from this. There's our deep blow as it comes in and brings our front through on Monday morning. Look at that tight gradient through western Washington. That's what the high wind watch is for up north. Skagit, Whatcom counties, San Juan County, and the coastal areas, high wind watch. It's going to warm us up a bit. And you can see that Arctic air, it's close, but a lot of it slides east of the Rockies there. Look at that, just pours into the Rockies. And this is what the, you know, this could be an interesting system here too. This pulls a lot of east wind out with it. So that could be interesting. If that comes in further south too, that could really get Portland with some kind of east wind and maybe a freezing rain event. That's the kind of system that would do it. And then you look in the future here, this another pretty stout Arctic air mass over, let's check the temperature of that. Plenty cold. I mean, that gets pretty close to the region now. So we might cool back down. But again, if you guys notice here, we usually get a big blocking ridge that allows this Arctic air mass into the region, and it's just not there. But yet this Arctic air is still setting up, which it's pretty unusual. I can't match this up with many patterns. To get Arctic air to build up in BC, you usually need a big blocking high, about 140 degree longitude west. And that's just not there. And then you'll see this Arctic air to slide east coast there in the future. And maybe we'll warm up and we'll start, I mean, this is back to a rainy pattern here. It's like a broad low out here and then a high here, and kind of like an atmospheric river there almost. This one is, I mean, this one there on into the, well, the one it's painting, let's see. That one is similar size. It's just, I don't think this is going to get into our region as much as the last one. It almost certainly won't, just because there's no steering mechanism to it. Yeah, thanks for all the subscribers and likes, you guys. Staying live till mid. No, I'll probably have to go after a bit here. Yeah, let's check out Portland. Portland International Airport, CC. Yeah, look at that. That drop off Sunday morning, very early in the morning. I guess that's just it's what the air mass we're still in. And then it warms up a bit. It doesn't stay very warm though. So it kind of makes me think that some of these runs are showing, I mean, there's pretty good agreement though in this. Let's bring up the, yeah, it looks like Portland's going to warm up, but it still stays a bit chilly. Yeah, thanks guys for watching. Happy New Year, everybody. I find it interesting how steadfast the ensembles are. They're really in good agreement, and I start to disagree at the end of the period here into next Thursday, but it's obviously going to get very cold tonight for all of Western Washington, Oregon. Yeah, I plan on doing briefings every day. I'd like to get someone to maybe help me with some of the channel stuff. It's kind of time consuming, but I know they just monetized the channel. I'm not trying to make money or anything, but I'd probably just give it to somebody. I have a couple friend meteorologists that I would just give the money to if they would just, monitor the comments and help me out a little bit. But yeah, the channel's doing good. Yeah, the channel will get better too. And once it slows down a bit, I'll go to more historical data and I'll compare past storms and I'll keep looking into the future and I'll explain local terrain phenomena better for like individual areas like the coast, and Portland, Seattle, the little microclimates we have all over the place, the Pacific Northwest here. Hello from North Seattle. So most models are released every 6 hours, 4 times a day. The European model runs at 0Z and 12Z, which is about 4 p.m. and 4 a.m. Seattle, and that runs out to 240 hours. Then it runs one at about 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. And those run out to 90 hours. The GFS runs 4 times a day. The NAM, the North American model, runs 4 times a day. The Canadian runs 4 times a day. The HER, for example, runs every single hour. The HER is a high resolution rapid refresh. It goes out to 18 hours, 24 times a day. And 4 of those runs, it runs out to 48 hours. It's very handy if you want up to the minute information. Yeah, Sammamish, if that front is powerful enough, it'll definitely get you guys too with snow on Sunday night and Monday morning. Yeah, I've been doing forecasting for quite a while for the Pacific Northwest here. I mean, I've been doing it actually since I was 5 years old, so that's going on over 40 years now. But I work for an airline and I'm a flight controller, so I do forecasts for Seattle every single day I work. But on top of that, I do a forecast for Boeing Field, Bellingham, Portland, Spokane, Boise, Anchorage. I do forecasts multiple times a day for multiple different stations across the United States. So I get a lot of practice forecasting, and that really keeps your skills honed sharply. And so I know where to gather information quickly from and where to find data. And I get a lot of practice on if my forecasts verify or not. So I'm learning, you learn what to say and what not to say. You learn what's more probable, and you kind of learn how to present it to people without totally freaking them out. But you want to kind of communicate that there is uncertainty and a possibility for significant weather to happen. Yeah, that's good. I mean, yeah, on TV you have just a brief period of time and you're trying to cover all of Washington State, and it doesn't matter how good of a forecaster you are. You could bring the best forecaster in the world, and if you only have 30 seconds to explain something, it's going to be really broad and not much detail, and so you might not get much out of it. But yeah, for working for an airline, I'll put out emails, and they have to be very precise, and you can't be alarmist, and you can't go overboard because there's going to be big decisions based on what you're saying. So you have to be really careful what you say, how you say it, and then you have to come back and you have to update your forecast. But yeah, being in aviation weather, I really get so much practice forecasting that it really pays off. And that's why I decided to do this channel. It's just, I enjoy doing it, and I think people get a lot out of it, and it just helps me hone my skills too. Yeah, Payne Field. I mean, you guys are. Payne Field is probably one of the better places for this upcoming frontal system from what I've been seeing. I mean, the NAM 3KM had some snow up there. The European, the GFS are showing snow up there. There's probably going to be some flakes flying around with this frontal system that blasts in. Yeah, aircraft dispatch is a good job, though. I know a lot of people don't hear about it. It's usually a lot of people end up getting the job because they work for an airline and then they hear about the job. But if you have a meteorology background or any kind of aviation background, if you're a pilot or anything, it really helps if you become an aircraft dispatcher. And there's United, Delta, American, Southwest, JetBlue, Alaska, Hawaiian. There's all kinds of smaller airlines like subsidiaries of United and American. There's Horizon here in Seattle. I worked for Island Air in Hawaii. They're a subsidiary of Aloha Airlines. And right when I got there is when they kind of split into their own airline. So there was Island Air, Aloha, and Hawaiian. And yeah, it's a nice job to have. I highly recommend it. I'm probably going to do a video about it. I'm going to interview some people and explain other ways you can use meteorology degrees or pilot skills or flight time, and you can put it towards jobs like flight dispatcher that not many people know about. No, that's more of a... No, that's usually Boeing. They fly out of Everett a lot of times. They're doing test flights for like new aircraft and stuff like that. I think they actually fly out of... We do test flights out of Boeing Field too. I don't do reports, but I'll do a forecast if I'm using... For example, a flight dispatcher who's flying across the country to Seattle wants to have an alternate airport when the weather is bad at Seattle. So they might decide that, hey, Everett looks... if you're considering a convergence zone, it's going to be hitting either Everett or Seattle and probably not both. So you might pick Everett. So you want to be actively forecasting and make sure the weather is going to be good for Payne Field when your plane arrives. Keep everybody safe. So you'll look at the weather and you'll do like a little mini forecast for Payne Field and Seattle, and then you'll go ahead and set your flight up. And sometimes it's foggy all through the Puget Sound, and maybe Bellingham's better. So then you use Bellingham as your alternate airport, and you go ahead and you are forecasting the weather for Bellingham for that day. And you get a lot of practice for that. Or the weather's really bad, and you try to use maybe Spokane or Boise for Seattle if there's a huge snowstorm in one part of the region, or if it's really foggy at all the airports in another part. Mahalo, Hawaiian for thank you, yes. Yeah, it depends what you're using it for. I had someone just ask now, what home weather station would be decent? It's not $1,000. The Vantage View is really good, especially if you want accurate information, but you don't want to have a huge elaborate setup on your house. I would definitely go with the Vantage View because it's got a nice console, and it's a great... You can just set it up on a deck, and the rain gauge is pretty good. It's got an anemometer on it. It's got a nice shield so the sun, when it does hit your station, it doesn't make the temperature readings go wild. But if you want to co-locate your anemometer, there's really... I can't stress enough just how good the Davis is. It's just worth it. You can get a Davis, a cabled or a wireless system for under $700 or $800. Yeah, Keith Evans has a Davis. Yeah, they're awesome. I have mine on a huge pole with guy wires above my house right now, and then I have the thermometer just above the grass, 4.5 feet, and the rain gauge is co-located with that. The problem with if you put a rain gauge up on top of a roof, you get wind that actually blows the water out of the rain gauge, and then the temperature reading on top of your roof is not accurate. And you want to have standard uniform readings, so you communicate to everybody at the weather station, put your station above grass, 4.5 feet, and then you get much more accurate readings and much more standard reading that you can trust more reliably with that when the information comes out, versus some guy's got a thermometer on top of his roof, another guy's got it over a cement driveway or a blacktop area. But yeah, if you're just looking for thermometer, information and barometer information, there's some cheaper stations that work just fine. Oh yeah, that 67-degree high up there in Kodiak. Yeah, that's basically that huge ridge just bringing really warm air up there. You can see this subtropical connection this jet stream has as it goes from the tropics. It extended all the way and just brought that warm air up there. And that's the reason, that huge ridge was what was bringing all that cold air down for us. So it's yin and yang. For every reaction, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So yeah, that's why a lot of times when we get our Arctic air, Alaska really warms up, and that's because that huge ridge that builds out over the Pacific. And you can see the ridge now is just kind of flattening out, and our next system is going to come in, and this front already looking pretty strong here. Check out all that cold air behind it. And this thing's just going to come barreling into our region here. Yeah, we're looking at some of the models, and some models are definitely more sold on snow than others. Like the Canadian is warmer and not showing much at all in the way of accumulation. But then if we go to the GFS, Global Forecast System, check out that band there across the Central Sound there, Sunday night to Monday morning. And I love snow more than anybody, but I find that solution a little hard to believe right now. But I got my fingers crossed. I've been wrong before. Every meteorologist is going to be wrong at some point or another. And if we look at the European model here, you can see it's got a little bit there between, Everett, kind of bullseye, the Everett area there, a little bit of snow for Seattle. And with the temperatures marginal, I tend to think that you might see a little bit of slushy accumulation, but not much. I don't like the marginal temperatures. Even though they may drop down, the front might be a little stronger than what the numbers are showing for temperature through the region here. Yeah, well, it depends on what's coming. If something really exciting is coming up and the Europeans been agreeing on things, I'll check the GFS first, just because I trust the European model so much more than I trust the GFS. So Aaron asked, do you have a typical workflow process when you create a new model run? And yes, a lot of times I'll just go way out to the North American view. I'll do this. I start here. I just go North America and I go pressure, because you can determine a lot about the weather just by looking at this map. Just right away, I know that Arctic air is kind of moving down into the plains, and I know there's a storm system out here, and I know there's a deep low here, and I know these are onshore gradients. And so I know that as this slides down, we're going to get a warm up by these gradients coming through here. And I start looking at things like, just how tight does this gradient get? What kind of winds can we expect? And I go, yeah, the gradient's tightening up pretty good there. So then I put these things in the back of my head and I go, okay, I'm going to check wind speed. I'm going to check how much we're going to warm up. And then I go, wow, look at this huge Arctic air mass up here in Alaska. And so then I start to look to see how much this is going to push down into our region. And then I say, if this gradient gets down right over southern Vancouver, British Columbia, then I really start paying attention to see if we start getting some Fraser River outflow and see if cold air gets into our region. And where this low sets up, it's kind of too far, it's kind of too far north there. But sometimes these just will sag down over time, and then that air makes its way into the region. So yeah, then I kind of have a workflow going there, and then I'll go right from there to the GFS, and then I'll kind of match that up, and I'll kind of let this run through. And GFS showing that tight gradient over Western Washington, and then I say, okay, how far does the Arctic air mass make it on the GFS? And it's kind of getting closer. And actually a brand new GFS is going here. This is the 0Z run here. So this is already coming in. And I mean, this is interesting. The GFS is fairly close. This is getting close to having a gradient that might let us have some offshore winds. So I'm interested to see what this will do in the future. But yeah, so then I will zoom in and I'll go to region, I'll go to northwest, and I'll kind of just look at temperatures from that point. Or if the wind is the big scenario, then I'll just go right into wind. But you can see this is the newest GFS. Let's see what it does for lows tonight. 17 in Seattle. Wow. 16. Actually, let's do 6 hour min here. And you can see we warm up tomorrow just, well, that's the minimum temperature for that 6 hour period. So we're probably going to get just above freezing tomorrow. And then we cool back down Sunday night a bit. Monday we warm, it just keeps us cool there on the GFS. GFS just does not want to warm us up that much. You can see it gets warmer a bit up north. You can see that southeast sucker wind we were talking about, and we got southerly gradients through the Puget Sound. Really roaring here. Wow, that's an impressive signal. We're going to zoom in and look at that. This new GFS here. Yeah, the GFS, I don't put a lot of stock in the GFS. I just don't. I do. The way I use the GFS is if the European model says something, then I look for the GFS to agree with it. And only then, if it agrees with the European model, my confidence grows in the solution a little bit. I will never just look at the GFS, and when it shows something different than the European model, I'm extremely skeptical of what the GFS is showing. And that's what's kind of happening here. It definitely has a colder solution versus the European model. Some of these wind speeds up here over the San Juans are just crazy. These are sustained speeds. And that's punching over 40 miles an hour sustained. So let's check the gust swath there. Yeah, gusts, maybe some 50 mile per hour gusts up through there from the southeast. The GFS really is low on these wind gusts here too, I've noticed. So the European will definitely come in higher with these. Whatcom, Skagit County, predict. Yeah, actually, no, we haven't looked too close. 1 second here. Oh, so Keith Evans, on a side note, he has a video of the 1993 inaugural windstorm. It's about an hour long. My mom took as a junior in high school. I'd love to see that. If you could get that on video and send it over. I mean, I've done a huge write-up. I remember that storm intimately. I was at Green River College during that. I'd love to see that. So yeah, let's look at what the GFS is showing up north too. And it's showing some, see that band across the central Puget Sound is just incredible. I severely doubt it, but maybe we'll see some flakes flying and get some accumulation. It's more believable up here. Skagit and Whatcom getting a little bit more. It's definitely more believable up here. But this, this front's not going to have an Arctic air tap. The tap is coming from Alaska. It's Arctic air, but it's across the Gulf of Alaska. So it's not like there's an active tap that's going to be helping out too much here. There might be some cold air trapped back in the valleys, but I don't know if this is going to be too much different for the lowlands up through BC. And the lowlands right on the immediate coastline for Vancouver and whatnot. Oh, there's a way to check that too, so let's go ahead and do that. This will give an example of what I'm talking about here. So we'll look at upper level wind. Let's do it 2,500 feet. And you can see all this is south and southeast here. This is Sunday afternoon. We're not tapping any more of this Arctic air. You can see the boundary is up here into central southern BC. That is not helping out the area. We're not getting a new influx of Arctic air here. This is just going to be the frontal system on its own working on it's fed by its cold air aloft. That's how it's going to have to be strong enough to tap that cold air aloft and bring it down to the surface. There's going to be no more Arctic air around. We're going to decimate this Arctic air mass in the western portions of the state with these southerly winds. Vancouver, Washington, or BC. I think that, I mean, the GFS favors the Central Sound, but I don't know about that. I mean, if the European starts to paint something like that, I believe it a little bit more. But again, this is going to be an event where it snows and sticks for a bit if it does occur. And then as soon as the precip stops, it's going to go above freezing again. So we're not going to be locked in this ice sheet. We're not going to be in the freezer again like we are right now. You can see at my house outside here on my Davis, it's 24.5 outside. And I'm not very far from the Puget Sound here. So it's frigid out there. So yeah, that's kind of the system moving in here. Once it passes through, there's some colder air with it, but it's really not, you can see the battle going on here. This Arctic outflow is making it into southern BC. It's close. I mean, that's getting close. But we're still got this onshore flow here, and you can see the boundary right here. Eastern Washington and Oregon, it's not going to matter, except for maybe the lowest valleys as this comes in. It might warm it up above freezing. Yeah, click the like button. My kids love watching the likes come in. And they're like, "Oh, Daddy, you got another subscriber." I'm like, "Oh, cool." And let's look at the upper air temperature here too. We'll look at you can see that just bitter Arctic air. That makes me a little bit nervous as a forecaster. If this low comes in a little bit further south or something happens, I mean, that is really bitterly cold air. And it's interesting to see that it's just not being tapped at all. You can just see that it's just locked up behind the Rockies here and just stays dangerously close up over British Columbia. Yeah, let's back out and look at the evolution of that. So you can see where that air is coming from that's going to bring us our powerful front is all the way out here in Alaska. And it starts off of Alaska and pours out over the Gulf there. And so then it becomes like dislocated from this. It's like a different branch of the Arctic air just gets out over the Gulf of Alaska. And then, so it becomes a distant cousin of this air mass. And as it moves over the region, you see that cold air just pour into Western Washington. And at the same time, this sags south through British Columbia. So originally from the same Arctic air mass, but then it becomes this big competition here of how far south is that Arctic air going to get. Are we going to get some of that in here at the lower levels? It looks unlikely at this point, but you can never say never, especially with that much cold air bottled up in there. And for snow lovers, you're just wishing there was some kind of ridge out here that's driving us down back into our region here. 19 at Lake Stevens. Northern Whidbey, 17 on the Sound too. Wow. Lake effect snow for Lake Washington. There's probably times where it might enhance precipitation in a really cold, snowy setup. But it's probably a small amount. I know for fog it does. Like the Lake Washington fog will actually creep back towards SeaTac when you get light easterly winds and foggy conditions. It'll move towards Boeing Field and SeaTac. I know the Puget Sound actually does enhance precipitation, like in a north flow, very cold north flow, just by a little bit, just a hair. And when a system moves through, like a cold system, and it's cleared out most of the region, a lot of times you'll still see like a cloud row over the Puget Sound because the Puget Sound is relatively warm. And so that warm air is kind of unstable and it rises up into that cold air above it and it'll form just a cloud layer across the Puget Sound. But it's not like the Great Lakes where you've got these huge lakes that are warm and then you've got really bitter cold Arctic air coming across it and picking up moisture as it moves across these lakes and dropping these snow bands. We don't get that kind of effect. We do get that kind of effect when you get Arctic air moving off central BC over the Pacific Ocean and back into the Pacific Northwest. In fact, actually, I'm going to save that for another video. But that's how we get our ocean effect snow, basically. Or if it gets out enough to get over the strait, Vancouver Island, it'll get unstable enough. We're warm enough out here that becomes unstable, and it starts to pick up moisture, and it comes back into the region, and we get kind of like an ocean effect snow. Where would the low have to be for that air to... Well, as long as you're on the north side of the low. So if this is 850, let's go back to surface wind. Where did I put it? Oh, is it not on here? It's not on here. We'll have to zoom in again. That low, if you're parking that low off the Washington coast here too, you'll see some easterly wind component in there. And then you could be talking about maybe bringing some of that down onto us. But even then, this low is just not interacting with this Arctic air mass really at all. This is just kind of flowing off the continent and banking up against terrain here. All right, you're back. Good. So yeah, this is I was kind of shocked to see this system. It's unusual that we're not interacting with the Arctic air north when it gets that close. So it makes me a little bit nervous as to what's going to happen. Are the models missing something here too? But then when you go to the GFS or the European, it shows kind of a similar thing here. You see that low out here, and it's just not really interacting. You can see a little bit of it flowing off the continent here on the north side of the low. So we would need this low pressure to be down here and then pulling it out like this, pulling it through the North Gap, the Fraser Gap, Stampede Gap, and the Gorge into the area. So the European, you can see, has that cold Arctic air a little bit further north, which, you know, it gives some confidence that it's not going to get down here, but it's still a little bit nerve-wracking because it was 96, December of 96, where we had really cold Arctic air up here, a similar setup where we didn't have the big ridge driving that cold air down into the region, and we had, you know, copious moisture just riding up, and we got cold air down into the region, and then we had these transition between snow, freezing rain, and then we had snow again, and then a really bad freezing rain episode near the end of it. And we were dealing with huge amounts of rain near the end. We had landslides. That was one of the most wild winters ever. We had 10 inches of snow on the ground at SeaTac at one point. Yeah, that's a good example too. Yeah, I talked about that in a previous video. That Fraser River outflow will come across out of near Bellingham and cross the Puget Sound, and that will pick up moisture over the relatively warm Puget Sound and just slams back into the Port Angeles area. You got big mountains just to the south of Port Angeles. It will hit that. You get the rising motion, and it just dumps a bunch of snow up there. It's not typical for Washington, but it does happen. We've had pretty severe winters here in the past, and sometimes, you know, we can go years without getting severe winters here. Even back in the day, even back in the 70s and the 60s at times, you know, we went a few years without severe winters, but then we would get them. They come back. I mean, we haven't had we've had a couple extreme Februarys, but the last extreme winter was really December 2008, and that was just for 1 month, really. We've had some good 1 month periods. January 2012, December 2008, February 2019, February 2021, December of this year. But sometimes we get some really epic winters here, and we just haven't had one in a while. Yeah, I'm all for the GFS being right. I'm a snow lover. You can see if I toggle back and forth here. Yeah, I'm just gonna go. We'll go Euro here, and we'll do. Oh, I went too far out. Yeah, see that Arctic air there versus the GFS, the European. Oh, let me get off that. There we go. The European has that low a little bit further north. So which one do you want to believe? I mean, sometimes the GFS wins around, you know, that it does happen. And it will go some periods where it performs better than the European model. It's just seems to be rare. Edmonds Pier collapse. I'm not sure which event that was. Was that the Mukilteo, the huge waves were hitting the Mukilteo, the restaurant there? Yeah, 96 was just a wild year. That so much snow was piling up. Then a huge freezing rain event was pretty damaging. It's hard to say anything about the spring other than La Nina springs tend to be much below normal temperatures. I mean, it's noticeably cooler in a La Nina year, especially into the first part of the new year. And let's update the GFS here. Let's go ahead and let's see how far we're out now. So we're looking at 850 millibar temperatures here. You can see these two air masses were born from the same Arctic air mass. One came out over the water, Alaska. In fact, let me just do that so I don't have to. We'll back up here. Here's the new batch of Arctic air coming off of Alaska. This is going to cause our powerful front into Monday morning. And here comes this Arctic air building up into British Columbia. So, you know, born out of the same mass, but one took the over water route. And you can see what happens when Arctic air gets over water. It causes cyclogenesis. It's, you know, it's warm. It wants to rise. It wants to form a low pressure system there. And so as you go forward here, you can see these air masses are just battling now. You can just see there's really no 850s traveling over water except for well north. And these don't even really get going and do anything. No cyclogenesis from this air mass out over the ocean. Really rare. So it's been a long time since I've seen something like that. So it's unusual. We usually have a big blocking pattern out here when we get Arctic air piled up over British Columbia. And this is going to make some headlines out east too. If this happens, they're finally going to get their shot of winter there. Oh, so it was snow load in 96. Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that. I mean, there was so much snow up north. And then you had rain falling into that snowpack too, the deep snowpack with just rain, freezing rain. It was, what a mess. I can remember living in Kent and we just had probably a half-inch glaze of ice, and it brought down these huge bushes and trees, and they were just basically lying in the street. It was an amazing sight. Yeah, December 29, 1996. That just an insane time. My anemometer was frozen, just encased in clear ice. It took like 2 days for it to break out. 2022, I think we're probably headed back towards a neutral year next year. That's what I think. So we're going to get away from La Nina probably for a couple of years, and it's probably an El Nino in our future in the next year or two. But we're probably off to it. We're probably going to have a below average start in temperatures into the early part of next year. But other than that, it's hard to say what exactly is going to happen. You know what? We can actually look. Let's go ahead and just, here, watch this. Let's do the, let's look at some extended stuff here. Let's just go 500s. Let's look at it in January. Look at that. See, now we're getting a signal here later in January where you're getting a big ridge out over the Pacific, and this can bring down cold air close to the region again. This is midway through January. This is way out there, but look at this. There's another signal out here. January 24th, check that out. Ridging and very cold air aloft here, another signal. So we might, you know, this winter looks like an active one. This goes out to the 31st of January here. This one goes month by month. Here's December 2021. We're almost done with this. That doesn't mean much to us. So this is just jumping right to February then, huh? But look at the signal for February of the upcoming season. I mean, pretty strong signal that the weather is going to remain active. General above average heights for the east. You know, they're usually getting, it's usually stormier. It looks like it's going to be a down winter for them. And that is a pretty amazing, oh, there goes January. Here we go. So yeah, January, maybe we'll get some break. Maybe we'll get some kind of break here in January. We've got the ridging here. February. Where'd February go? This thing is just all wonky. Okay, there's February. I think I know what's happening here. Okay, there we go. January, February, March. So yeah, I mean, look at that signal for February again. 2 out of the last 3 years, we've gotten a huge February snowstorm, record snowfalls. So maybe we'll do it again one more time, huh? Edmonds Marina collapsed. Yeah, it just has that feeling this year. It's just kind of a nutty year. It's just from bomb cyclones in October to just record rains to just this brutal cold snap. It's just really an interesting weather time. This is the control run of the CFS. I mean, this is not that accurate, but look at this. This is a signal for cold again in the Pacific Northwest. Big ridging. This would be a northerly flow here, driving this down into our region. And this is just likes to skip 2 through there. February, and this one doesn't look that active. So you can see the discrepancy going on here. March, big ridging on the west coast there. April, who knows? This is just getting way out to La La Land here, though. Maybe a nice signal for storm chasers out here in June with some troughing. But these forecasts are really worthless as you get out towards that far out. We're just doing it for some entertainment purposes. All right, yeah, subscribe. I'll make it fun. I'll come on here every day. Once it calms down, I've got a lot of information, a lot of past storms to go over. You know, I want to go over individual climate features for certain regions across western Washington and Oregon, the coast. What kind of storms affect what? Snow load collapsed it, yeah. Probably that snow load with rain falling into it, just too much for it to take. Okay, let's take one more look at the GFS here, then I'm probably gonna shut it down for the night. And I'll do another video tomorrow morning or tomorrow night, depending on what the models show. Tomorrow is Saturday, so that gives us still plenty of time. But let's look and see what that front looks like coming in on this latest GFS. And let's zoom on in to the northwest. Yeah, Sunday night into Monday morning, the GFS just keeps that cold look to it. Let's pick the height of the precip there, 9Z, very early Monday morning. Let's look at surface temperature, and we're going to look at the minimum. We'll look at 6-hour min, 30, 28. So the minimum would be more accurate of what is occurring as the precipitation is falling. So it doesn't show it being above freezing. So it maybe, and look at that, kind of drops off there. And I think this is where the GFS, though, was pulling some air through the gaps that didn't look that likely. Now you can see kind of that easterly component. It's pulling air through there, and I don't know that that is going to be enough to cool us down that much. I kind of balk at that. So that's why I lean towards the European being more correct with those temperatures. But I wouldn't be surprised to get snow, and but I just don't think it's going to accumulate much on the roadways. And we'll take a closer look at that on tomorrow's video. Yeah, Happy New Year, everybody. Yeah, I'll go over mountain wave events. We deal with that in aviation a lot. I'll do gap wind events. We'll do what causes their big windstorms, what causes their big snowstorms, little micro features of the climate. I'll go everything, even when dust devils are coming up. I mean, there's so much to go over. We live in an amazing place. We've got convergent zones. We've got gorge, gap, east winds. I'll show how those systems develop. We have stampede gap winds. We've got Fraser River Valley winds. We've got even winds that come out of Purcell Trench, Okanagan River winds. So there's a lot to go over. And of course, we live right next to one of the snowiest places on Earth, the Washington, British Columbia, the Cascades, mountain ranges up into British Columbia. A very unique area, and we have some of the driest areas. We have extreme deserts, and the only rainforest in the lower 48 is on the Washington coast. The Hoh rainforest. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna end the stream now, and I'll do a video either tomorrow morning or it'll come during some point tomorrow. So thanks for watching, guys, and I hope that this was helpful. It was fun chatting with y'all. And 24.5, and we're gonna sign off here. So, all right, thanks a lot, everybody. I'll talk to you later.